I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Lee, who will be moderating this conversation. Anthony is the co-founder of C100. He's a former co-chair of our board and longtime board member and forever time C100 charter member. Since 2000, Anthony has served as managing director of Altos Ventures, where he invests across industries, but primarily in software and digital media, including several companies from Canada, such as Allocadia and Bench, just to name a couple up in Vancouver. Altos has been the lead and early investor in marketplace companies all around the world. Companies including Coupang, Roblox, Quizlet, Outdoorsy, and the Woo-Wah brothers. Anthony is a great community leader. He serves as chairman of TechSoup, which is the world's largest nonprofit distributor of software and hardware. And he's a member of the Pacific Council on International Policy and a member of the Full Circle Fund, which is a venture philanthropy group. Anthony's originally from Sudbury, grew up in Vancouver, and now resides in the Bay Area. Anthony, thank you so much for contributing to today's discussion and for helping us have a great conversation with our marketplaces founders. Over to you.
Thank you, Laura. All right, that was a very fancy introduction, but my job right now for the next 50 minutes is just to get everybody through here and introduce these 4 awesome companies and founders. This is my 18th 48 hours since we started C100. I missed one when I was in Asia. And I'm usually like hanging out in the audience, talking to the various people who are there. And this is actually the first time I've been moderating a panel. So I'm actually a little nervous today, but we'll get through this. The beauty of this event, 48 hours, and really of this whole community is that it offers a very personal way for founders, investors, mentors to meet each other and turn those relationships into hires and advisors and board members and investors and customers. And I want all of you to try to get that out of the next 38 or so hours that are left in this event. And it's really hard to do this online. And especially like right now, I think it's just past 2 o'clock on the West Coast, 5 o'clock on the East Coast. So it's a little earlier for coffee here, a little early for cocktails there. So we're at this really kind of awkward time when everybody is probably looking at their emails and their Slack. But if you give me your attention for 50 minutes, I will try to compress this session so that we go fast enough to hit all the high points that we want to hear from these founders about. Our topic today is marketplaces. And I want you to ask questions, ask them either by putting up a hand, interrupting, or posting. Probably the easiest way is to post on the Zoom chat, and I'll be monitoring that, as will Laura. And ask questions about marketplaces, ask questions about companies, ask questions about raising capital in Silicon Valley. Many of you have done that successfully. And you are here to help each other out as much as the mentors are here to help you. So that's what we're going to do in the next little bit here. As Laura said, I am one of the 3 managing directors at a firm called Altos Ventures. We today manage about 45 billion across 100 active companies around the world. We're a very small team, but have a pretty broad reach. We're a generalist, so I disclaim any particular expertise in marketplaces. But as it turns out, when I looked through our portfolio after Laura asked me to do this, most of our biggest companies are marketplaces. So in Asia, we're investors in the largest e-commerce company, the largest food delivery company outside of China. In the US, we are investors in the largest marketplaces for RV rentals, a marketplace for property management in the United States. And then we even have marketplace investments in companies that do content. Laura mentioned Roblox, which is a 3D world, mostly for kids. Some of your kids may be on it right now. Quizlet, which is another one for educational content and studying. So what that meant for me was that marketplaces aren't just places where people buy and sell stuff, products, but marketplaces are platforms where people exchange entertainment, services, content, and even insight. We have an investment in a company in Australia that is the largest marketplace for meditation content and meditation teachers called Insight Timer. So we have a really broad way of thinking about marketplaces, and I want the group here today to think quite broadly about it too. Is Boris on here? Do I see Boris? I had asked Boris Wirtz to join because Boris and Boris, just pipe in if you're here. Boris and Angela from Version 1 Ventures are both charter members of C100 who have written every couple of years a guide to marketplaces that you should all read. And I'm gonna post. They just released their third version. I just posted it to the Zoom channel right now. So if you're not paying attention to this talk and this panel, you should be reading that, but not your email. Boris, are you around?
I don't see him, but I'm going to track him down.
Okay, well, when he pops in, we'll have him do a little special guest talk on marketplaces because he's the guy who really should have moderated this panel. Okay, so let's jump in here. I will ask each of the folks to introduce themselves. I'm not going to do a really good job of it. And I'll start kind of from east to west. So why don't we go with Brad in Ottawa, who is the founder and CEO of GoFor. Brad, give us like 2 minutes on your company or 3 minutes on your company, why you started it, who you are, and what you are doing in the marketplace world.
Sounds good. As Anthony mentioned, Brad Rollo, CEO of GoFor. I'll give you a little bit of my background. It's kind of unique where I have a mix of construction, something I did between jobs and summer jobs, that sort of thing, and technology. Spent some time in the .com days for a company called BuyStream, raised $20 million one day, and have all kinds of .com customers and watch it dry up pretty quickly. Left that to go to a couple other startups, all in the product management role before kind of getting that entrepreneurial bug and starting my own thing. That own thing happened to be, because I was not a coder, happened to be a construction company. So the genesis of GoFor was just me trying to solve my biggest pain point as a owner operator of a construction company is how do you keep your job sites moving? How do you keep your guys working? So getting product to a job site is key, that supply chain. So GoFor was born over in 2015 on a napkin over a beer, complaining about our job like everybody in construction does. And now we've kind of expanded to this, this kind of last mile marketplace for construction across geography, across Canada, from Vancouver all the way to St. John, Newfoundland, but we're also well into the States and launching, I could say, 22 markets over the next 6 months.
Great, thanks very much. James, I think you are in Toronto, even though I know that background is not a Canadian lake, it's a lake in the United States somewhere.
Yes, it's Heart Lake in Lake Placid. So Brad, you vacation there as well, being so close by.
I have
but
been.
The that was great to hear your background, because I worked 9 years in framing and carpentry as well, as an owner operator, and definitely supply and logistic issues could be a major pain. So that's great. So for me, I'm the CEO. So I'm James Bateman, the CEO and co-founder at MedChart, and we're a health data marketplace that focuses on empowering individuals to use their consent and authorization to let their health data be shared for commercial purposes. So with this business, it was founded by myself and my co-founder Derek Chow when we were in our PhDs in engineering. After working for 9 years in carpentry, I decided to pivot, I guess my first pivot, and go and study quantum physics, and did an undergrad, master's, and was in my PhD in engineering physics. Got to work hands-on with quantum computers, got publications in physical review letters, and really deep dive on my understanding of computer science. And it was great. And in that time, unfortunately, my father-in-law got sick and passed away from cancer. And it was the challenges that our family faced in coordinating that health data that sparked MedChart, of saying, no one ever said no to my mother-in-law when she needed that data, and she used her patient right to access. And two, the barriers that she faced going to health records departments to get that information and coordinate it were no different than the ones faced at scale by these large commercial enterprises, whether it's in the insurance industry or things like class action lawsuits for medical evidence or real world evidence for pharma. And that's what really sparked MedChart, is allowing you to be able to coordinate and direct that data use. And it's been great. I mean, we launched into the US and we set up our US headquarters out of Dallas, Texas in February, and just are on the tail end of our Series A fundraising process. So things are shaping up very well there. I should be closing that out very soon. So it's been a good journey so far.
Great, thank you, James. Casey, let me go to you. Casey is with Virtuo. He's based in Calgary. And when we talked last week, you said you're not really a marketplace, but you've had a week to think about why you are a marketplace. So give us the
Yeah,
idea.
you know, we definitely are a marketplace, but that's not why we got into the business. And so it kind of evolved into that. So so anyways, Casey Kachur, CEO of Virtuo and based in Calgary. So how it all started was back in 1938, believe it or not. So anyway, so my grandparents founded a moving company, a one truck company, and after 3 generations, we grew it into a relatively large international relocation company and moving company. So that's where kind of the ideas started forming. But I guess most importantly, like a good, family business boy, I started working in the business at 14 and did every job under the sun, worked in every single department. Yes, I worked on the road as a mover right before university, which definitely I've got some great stories, but that's a separate call. But I think the important thing was the unique experience it gave me with respect to, I guess, the big problems, pains, inefficiencies on all sides of what was happening. So there's obviously, the demand side, supply side, and bigger industry problems and inefficiencies and pains. And so these are all problems that I saw, throughout my career. And it really, stems into the problem that we all know, the common and relatable one. We all know buying a home is really exciting. It's the most amazing purchase of our lives. And we also know that, shortly thereafter, it becomes a lot of work and it's painful. Moving sucks. Owning a home is painful. It's really a part-time job. And so we ended up, my father and I selling the business in 2017. It was, timing was amazing. I was already working on Virtuo, working on the technology of it and the vision. And so it was just worked out well. And I was able to launch off in 2016. And so Virtuo is tech-enabled home concierge service. We eliminate every painful experience in that homeownership journey. So we orchestrate and manage all of the services involved and the delivery of them and service providers. And most importantly, we have a human concierge team that takes care of those never-ending to-do lists that we all know and hate. And so ultimate objective is for people to enjoy and love their home and settle into the lives that they envisioned when they purchased it, because we create this life in our minds and oftentimes we don't get there. So anyway, so traction wise, I mean, we're operating in 6 markets. We just got pulled into California with Brookfield, and so our model is B2B2C. We partner with large housing and mortgage companies, and that's our vehicle for the mass acquisition. And so far so good. It's been working and been having fun.
Terrific. Thank you, Casey. And then last but not least, Jeremy of RedCircle. Jeremy is somewhere between Vancouver, San Francisco, and LA. So if there's ever a big Pacific Rim earthquake, we will lose that company. But Jeremy?
That's precisely right. Thanks for the introduction. I was born in Vancouver, spent the last 6 years in San Francisco, but started my career in New York at a well-known marketplace company called Uber, where I got to enjoy scaling with that company over a 6-year period before starting RedCircle 2 years ago in 2018 with my co-founder, who was also my engineering manager at the company. Me and him ran a group there where I was heading product and he was running engineering. And so we looked back at kind of the original mission of what Uber was doing in terms of giving dollars, putting that money, extra money into people's pockets. And we wanted to explore a similar mission. And so he actually approached me, funny enough, with a business plan. Not often an engineer approaches with a well-written business plan. So that was an attractive selling point. And we started building RedCircle, which is a platform that essentially our mission is to make sure podcasters and creators get paid. And we do that through a number of different ways, through advertising, subscriptions, and donation models. So we don't neglect any business models on RedCircle. We do it all. And in terms of how we operate as a marketplace, there's a lot between matching advertisers with the creators on our platform.
Great, terrific. So as I said at the very beginning, I'm not the expert on marketplaces. I did share a report on the Slack, on the Zoom chat that was just published today by Boris and his partner, Angela, their third such report on marketplaces. And Boris has joined us here. So I'm gonna just hand it over to Boris, special surprise guest speaker, to give us a minute or two on like why marketplaces are such a huge freaking deal.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, no, former marketplace entrepreneur and now investing in marketplaces through version 1 and one of our areas of focus. I think like when you take a step back, marketplaces are so special, as are actually platforms, because they enable something that wasn't really possible beforehand in pre-internet, really. Getting on the one hand side fragmented supply and fragmented demand onto one platform and let them trade. And the fun thing has been, you know, we've been now through so many generations of marketplaces, right? And they continuously seem to reinvent themselves and look at new areas. You know, started with like the traditional auction model, then more product marketplaces, then service marketplaces, then it became managed marketplaces. We've seen all of the mobile first marketplaces recently, you know, kind of B2B marketplaces have really seen an incredible uptake. And then kind of now I think what's happening in kind of in the whole blockchain decentralized version of it, like we see new forms of marketplace. So it's just super fascinating to see how the concept of a marketplace is and bringing fragmented supply and demand together on one platform is a super powerful one and has been you know, super powerful since the beginning of the internet now, you know, close to 25 years ago in all sorts of variations.
Awesome, Boris, thank you. And again, please take a read of his report. What is very striking in that report is that his map of marketplaces every time gets way bigger and way more complex because there's so many more different types of marketplaces. And one of the things he just said was that marketplaces enable something that wasn't possible before. And so we have a group of 4 founders here. We have a carpenter, a builder, a farmer, and a mover who are all now tech CEOs. And so I want you to tell me, we're going to do lightning round here, and I'm going to go in reverse order, what you're enabling that wasn't possible before, who is the supply, who is the demand, and what is the transaction, just in a nutshell, so everybody here can level set on what you're doing. So I'm going to start with Jeremy.
Yeah, I was the farmer. So.
Right. It's like a nursery song or something.
Yeah, no kidding. So what we're opening up access to opportunity for podcasters. We're really giving them access to brands, and obviously the subscriptions and donations model, we can separate that out in terms of marketplaces. But that's what we're unlocking. There's 1.5 million podcasters registered on, or podcasts registered on Apple as of a month ago. I think when we started, there was roughly 500,000. So the supply is the podcaster, and that trend is just accelerating. There's just more and more content being developed in the podcasting space. And on the demand side, that is the advertiser side. And that's where we're trying to service. We're obviously naturally servicing both sides of this marketplace, but we're hoping to do the best on the advertising side.
And bonus question, who is the prime, like in every marketplace, there is a primary customer. Like, yes. Where is the constraint in your marketplace? Who are you mostly focused on?
Yeah, I always look at, it's a fun question because I think back to my previous experience, and it's like, where are the engineers working is the better question. And I think like the engineers are mostly focused on advertising tools. and that's the customer that we're most focused on. That's if we service them really well, the podcasters get paid, and that brings on more podcasters, and that's kind of our loop.
Great. Okay, Casey, so
just to quickly jump in here, like I think it's such a fascinating question around buyers or sellers, like what is more important, right? And I think where I have ended up on after thinking and observing a lot about this topic is, in the beginning it's all about supply, but ultimately it's all about buyer mindshare. So like it's not either or, but it's kind of different things at different times. And I think everybody needs to start with supply, otherwise there's no marketplace, nothing to buy, nothing to kind of order. Right, but ultimately you only win on buyer mindshare. And especially as supply gets more and more non-exclusive, because people get better tools to move their supply left, right, and center and participate in different labor marketplaces or product marketplaces, etc. It's all about the buyer mindshare.
Yeah, thank you, Boris. I'm glad you interrupted. That's a very good point, and it's a little bit more of a subtle point. It reminds me of a conversation I just had with an executive at Etsy who said they were exclusively focused on the suppliers, the creators, and the craft designers, and the people who you think of as Etsy. But the company, after it went public, made a shift to focus on the buyers, because if they could drive buyers, their suppliers would be happy. So it does. That's a very important point, that it changes over the life of the company. All right,
Yeah,
Casey,
if I can just add to that, sorry. That's exactly how ours has kind of played out. The first year of the business, we just exclusively built podcaster tools or tools for supply. And now that's really switched hardcore to the other side.
Okay. I have a question on your business, which I'll come back to from Trevor, but I want to just get the quick answers from the other three, the other builder, mover, and farmer here, or carpenter. So Casey, you were the mover. Who is your supply? Who is your demand? And what are you enabling that wasn't enabled before? Which side are you focused on right now?
Yeah, so I'm the mover. I'll answer the primary customer one, because that's ultimately why we got into the business, and it's to enhance the value and the experience of that end consumer, and ultimately that home buyer or homeowner. And then came the kind of the B2B partnerships with the large housing and mortgage companies, and so they would obviously complement that. And so that acquisition, became obviously on the demand side, and then the supply side is obviously all the home service providers. And so our main focus is really just driving value down to those end consumers. And now we're introducing a new piece of the puzzle, which is some community partners that are able to now drive value through our platform back down to these consumers. So it really is all about the consumers. They're the ones, ultimately that we focus 100% of our efforts on. And I guess we've been lucky in the sense that through our B2B partnerships and our model, we've been able to drive that acquisition and create demand, and then ultimately the supply, based on, I guess because of my experience and because we had some demand, it was relatively easy to fill the supply. And so that's kind of how ours works. Did I answer all of them?
You got it. Okay, James.
All right. So am I the builder or the carpenter? I think
you're the carpenter.
Bit of a gray line. I think they do both. So for us, the transaction unit here is your health record. We're a B2B2C model. So we are selling to the demand side. They're the paying customers. And these are commercial businesses such as insurers, lawyers. So it could be, medical evidence, giving your lawyer your medical evidence from your motor vehicle accident, or real world evidence team for a clinical trial, for example. The interesting thing about our marketplace is that the supply we're not supply constricted, because with this health data, the suppliers have a compliance requirement to provide it to you when you're operating with patient consent and authorization. So they always have to supply it. But the problem is that the supply is very fragmented and archaic, with literally using like fax and couriers. So it's just a cost issue of sort of how do you improve your gross margins of that supply over time. But it gives us an opportunity to be able to seize the market on the demand side. And then with that supply as just an overall environmental shift over time, these data suppliers are incentivized to reduce their costs in how accessible they're making the data, which ultimately will benefit us and our customers as well.
Got it. Great. Brad?
Yeah, sounds great. I guess I'm the builder. Yeah, so our marketplace is, what we call a three-sided marketplace, right? So we have the demand side, which I see as the retailers, right? The Home Depots, the HD Supplies, the Sherwin PPGs, right? And we help them not only like augment their customer service, right? Whether it's, faster delivery, ability to do more deliveries in a day, that sort of thing. Then we have kind of the group that drives the equation really, which is the end user. And that typically, if you got me 6 months ago, 8 months ago, that was the professional contractor, the general contractor, the subs and stuff like that. Now, post-pandemic, that's being driven a lot by the consumer side. So they put the pressure onto the retailers to better service them. And then you have our third part, and that's the logistics providers, right? We have to work with these fleet operators, these owner operators, to ensure the ability to move the products, quickly and efficiently across our marketplace.
Okay, terrific. So I'm going to go a little chronologically now in how to build a marketplace. One of the very first things after you figure out who you're serving, and if it's a two-sided, three-sided marketplace, is how do you start? How do you get initial critical mass? Chicken and egg, right? And yeah, each of you had little hacks when I talked to you about how you did that, how you captured some secret thread of supply. Brad, do you want to talk about the drivers and how you tapped into that? And then maybe Casey, you talked a little bit about solving the chicken and egg problem through some partnerships.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. It's interesting, marketplaces find any way to get it done, right? And so that supply side, that driver side, the logistics part is the hard part, right? You have to have enough demand that you can keep them busy and earning the money that you need to make every day, or you have to pay for them to be there, right? You'll see Uber advertise, guaranteed salaries, right? Guaranteed money. We've gone through that, right? So while you're building that critical mass up, you find any way to do that. And that included me spending a lot of time in a truck, driving around doing the deliveries in the early days, right? I had an alias, right? So nobody knew who it was. I drove the truck and made sure deliveries happened until we got to a certain point when we hit every deliveries. Then we could then bring on the second vehicle, right? And fill it that way. So you're constantly, it's a yin and yang. You're constantly taking steps up. We've done a great job now in our company that we've gotten so much critical mass. We've now eliminated the need for these guaranteed minimums, the liquidity supplements, and allows the marketplace to drive itself.
Casey, you want to give us your example?
Yeah, for sure. So we were, when we launched, we were B2C model, and we were playing around a little bit with the chicken and egg and blowing our brains out in marketing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's when we started forming relationships with large home builders, is where we started, and kind of evolved into lenders and financial institutions, et cetera. So it was amazing for us, because it was, they first of all, I totally understood the problem. They understood the big picture issue. And so we were very aligned there. We both wanted to drive value down and solve this problem for the home buyers specifically. And that ultimately solved this a little bit, ultimately solved chicken and egg problem for the most part for us, because we automatically had hundreds, thousands of home buyers that we were working with. And so, and I think it was also great, again, coming from where I came from, the service provider side. I understood how it worked. I came from that side, so I knew what was fair. I knew how to talk to them. So it really wasn't an issue for us. Fortunately, it likely would have been if I didn't have that experience. So that's one piece of it. And then I guess the other component is we're a human-driven model, I guess. And so it's given us the ability to, I guess, make a few mistakes along the way, because we have our humans really driving the experience. The technology powers it. And so there's just another kind of piece of the messy puzzle, it probably sounds like, but it's all working.
Yeah, very good. So you kind of start by focusing on like the seam of supply, where you can capture some initial critical mass. And then one of the things with really successful marketplaces is that they're really able to get the middle part, or the long tail going, right? And then you have a really vibrant marketplace. Jeremy, you and I talked a little bit about that by email, and we happen to have a question from Trevor Addy. Trevor, I think you were in Nova Scotia. I don't know where you are physically these days, but last time I remember talking to you, you were in Nova Scotia. And Trevor is asking, what is the discovery mechanism for consumers of podcasts? I love Kara and Rogan, but I would love a more sophisticated vehicle to screen the other million podcasts.
Yeah, that's a good question. Discovery in podcasts is kind of notoriously poor, and that's because there's not a dominant consumer application for it other than Apple that's kind of neglected it. So funny enough, YouTube is actually an exceptional discovery algorithm for podcasts. And I think Spotify is doing a good job now as well, as it kind of leaned into the market. Our business is a little bit different in that we don't have a consumer facing application for the listener. We're actually the underlying infrastructure for the podcast for the creator themselves. But if I was pointing you in a particular direction, those two are good options. And then any kind of explore option on any app, we'll give you a few recommendations as well. We are, just to not ramble too much, but we created a product that allows podcasters to trade essentially promotional ads with one another. And that's a really popular way for podcasters themselves to get the word out about their show and grow their audiences.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go back to my chronology of growing a marketplace. And the next part I want to focus on is expansion. And we have an expansion expert here, Andre Charoux, who helped open a bunch of markets for Uber. Andre, I'm going to cold call on you since you're kind enough to be on video. Can you talk for like 30, 60 seconds on what market expansion at Uber was like in the heyday?
Sure. I was fortunate to be really early, and I brought Uber to Canada and originally got trained in New York and launched DC. In those days, it was limos in my time at Uber. And we had to get a certain number of cars on the platform, or convincing them that they could give us their down hours in order for us to deliver the service. And it wasn't really trivial, but we had the tailwind of coming out of the financial crisis in 2008 that these folks were actually open. Now, not necessarily the large limousine providers, but those with one or two cars. And so once we got them, we then had to find unique ways to get riders. And it might sound like, pressing a button and getting a ride seems pretty amazing, was pretty trivial and easy to get riders to join. But this was when Uber was 50% more than a taxi. So, and not a lot of people wanted to ride around in a limo. So it actually was pretty hard. And we figured out unique distribution channels, not paid advertising in those days. We used event planners actually to figure out how they could put us in front of the right type of buyer, the right type of rider that would actually value the service at the moment in time that they needed it. And once we kind of had that going in a small area, particularly in like a neighborhood that we would only be able to service it, we would soft launch it. Then once we could start delivering our wow experience, which was defined by getting a ride in 5 minutes, which we totally could not do in the earliest days. But that's why we covered it with a soft launch. We then worked our way to what we called a public launch, where we felt pretty good that we would deliver 90% of the time a 5-minute pickup time within a certain radius. And then as a launcher, I had to do that, but I also had to find the team that was going to persist, and more credit goes to them because they actually built the business. And then I would go on to the next market. And that's some insight into how we launched one particular market.
So in our experience as investors around the world, a lot of building marketplaces is like a lot of ground combat, especially when you're expanding cities. And Brad and Casey, you guys will have this kind of geographic expansion playbook that you're going to run. For James and for Jeremy, you guys are more digital in nature, right? You're dealing with digital assets, health records, with podcasts. Can you guys talk about how you think of expansion?
Sure. Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, James.
For us, it's not the way that I think about expansion is you've got your large geographies. So where you have a difference in sort of the regulatory environment. So in this case, Canada versus the US, for example. But once you're within that environment pre-launch, so I mean, we just expanded into the US in February. So it was a lot because of the fact that the supply side, is forced to provide us with the data through compliance. It's really a matter of solving all of those compliance questions in advance, so that way when you launch and you're going out to sell to the demand, you're able to service them. So launching into the U.S., there were a lot of opportunities because the current environment and like the the competitors were displacing are very much like professional services outsourcing labor, because there's no magic bullet to get connection to health data where no connection exists today. So these large corporations just staff up labor. And then now we're coming in and we're providing them with a technology solution that gives them, I guess our first foothold into their business are operational improvements. So like workflows, integrations with their softwares. How are we better than outsourcing labor? And then that allows us to secure enough on the demand side, enough law firms, enough insurance companies, et cetera, that we have a compelling business case of aggregated demand to go to some of these larger suppliers and say, hey, if you build a proprietary connection with us, we've got, thousands of customers that we can put through our data feed that are all fragmented and faxing you today. And imagine what your staff have to do when they have to respond to those faxes. What kind of man hours are going into that for your large retail pharmacy multiplied across 10,000 stores? So it's been very compelling in terms of our expansion playbook. It's win the demand first. Then with the demand, you're building value to transform the supply side. And now that runs a flywheel of just delivering more value add to your paying customers and continues to grow. And then the expansion sort of beyond that is around verticals, because the geographically we're operating coast to coast from day one. We can't service one customer without national coverage. So now it's thinking about it from a verticals, and all these subsequent verticals that come on are all going to benefit from that groundwork that you laid from sort of your initial point of entry. So hopefully they'll be a lot easier.
Right. And Jeremy, I would imagine in your case, it's even a broader playing field. You probably have some geographic stuff to do with languages and advertisers, but I mean, podcast content is global by nature.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest things stopping from geographic expansion is transactions outside of US dollars. And then language is obviously a complicated one. I helped build the translation services at Uber, so I understand very well how difficult language can be from a technology standpoint. Our expansion kind of playbook, we started off, and this goes back to what Boris said, was really centered around building tools for the podcaster and giving that away for free, which wasn't really a thing when we were doing it. And then we've slowly, obviously, built up our supply, started matching more advertisers with that supply, and then just kind of being grind back and forth using advertising dollars to acquire new podcasters. And that's been the loop we've been playing with. And then to further that, we have these additional monetization features around subscriptions and donations that keep kind of hooks on the supply side, that keeps them there on the platform.
Gotcha, great. So once you guys have gotten down the path on expansion, whether it's geographic or capturing more of the data or more of the supply in a digital sense, then the last part we think about in marketplace is how do you build long-term stickiness, competitive advantage? How do you stop people from going off your platform and doing transactions off platform, or just going to another marketplace? Can I ask Brad and James, like what are going to be your like long-term competitive advantages? And I'll also come to Casey and Jeremy on this too. Brad.
Sure. Yeah, I think
in like a quick elevator pitch.
Yeah, I think there's two things that we see are real advantages, right? We built this on a technology platform, and we knew from day one that the best way to service our customers and their customers was to be integrated, right? So Home Depot, we're integrated across their ERP, their e-commerce, that sort of thing. So how are you going to take us out, right? We're not easy to remove anymore. We're sticky. And then the other fact, in especially in the world what we live in, is that the customer service, the delivery experience has to be top notch, right? You're going to see our competitors fail because they don't put the emphasis on the delivery. They charge $5 for moving a box, and that's not going to translate to happy drivers and therefore a bad delivery experience. We come in completely different, and we focus on making sure that end user really enjoyed that delivery, right? Because at the end of the day, that end user is not going to go, holy smokes, GoFor did a horrible job. They're going to be, Home Depot did a crappy job, right? Your brand reputation is tied to how well I do.
Okay, terrific. So I just rode 28 floors up the high rise with you in the elevator. That's probably not COVID compliant. So I'm going to ask James to do this in 12 floors.
Sure, no problem. So for us, because the data, like the supply side is required to give us the data, it puts us in a position where there's not going to be any sort of gaps in the information that we're pulling together. So we're sort of in have a unique opportunity to be a data aggregator and build a system of intelligence. So that's how, all this data we're pulling from these fragmented sources, how do we deliver actionable business insights that are keyed into these core businesses? And then also, because of the sensitivity of the health record, MedChart aggregating that information becomes their system of record for the data, for their auditing, as well as for their financial tracking for that information.
Awesome. Okay, good. That was about 12 floors. I'm still alive. Casey, so you're coming into the US now. There's a lot of competition for what you're doing in the US. How do you ultimately win?
Yeah, so I guess it's two-part. It'd be around the B2B2C partnerships, which is working really well and driving high acquisition and demand, and that creates more value, and also the other partners we're pulling in. And also I think the biggest one is around our concierge team, the productivity of our concierge team. So we're 100% focused on the value of that end user, and that's been our secret sauce to this point. And so all of our investment in our technology goes into making them more productive, and they ultimately become a bit of our moat, and they ultimately become a bit of our subsidy, because we can play around with that, and that's our competitive advantage, and that's driving the majority of the value. And then we're bringing in the other sides to bring in more and more and more value, and that creates obviously a network effect, and also the data and the insights that we can capture here and drive back into that just to drive better experiences. We're not focusing on revenue, we're focusing on amazing experiences, and we think that's going to keep us rolling.
And Jeremy, I imagine you win when you have the supply and demand all clicking, but tell me more.
If I offered you a loonie or a toonie, you'd take the toonie. So we win as soon as we're making the creators get paid the most, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So I promised that we would end a little early here to give us time either to get our stuff done or hang out on the main stage. Before I do, there was something that Angela did in her panel, which I really liked, which was to remind everyone that the whole C100 framework and purpose is for us all to be helping each other out. And it's not just mentors helping companies, it's companies helping each other, founders helping each other, our corporate members who are a part of this call as well. So I would ask each of the folks, each of the four of you, to tell us what you would like from C100 in the next year. And I'll start with Jeremy.
I would love more of this. Connecting with founders is I think some of the most rewarding experiences I have. And so just continuing to bring us all together, I think, is really valuable. I think it's wild to see kind of what one-off conversations can lead to. Networks are powerful things. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that C100 itself is a marketplace. We're a marketplace for talent and mentorship and help and capital, and you guys should use it. Brad, what do you want from C100?
Yeah, I think these kind of conversations, right? Talking to other founders, to provide inspiration, help solve problems, because there's a lot of things that, we're going to cross that somebody else has already gone through and can provide some expertise there. And then of course it's the network, right? As we as we're a Canadian company expanding across the US and looking at our channel partnership strategy, there's a lot of those partners are headquartered in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and those intros into those kind of companies are key for us.
Good. James.
Yeah, so I mean, first I want to say thank you for the help that you've provided so far. I mean, we just went through our Series A fundraising process, and I felt like we got a lot of really great support from the team, and was able to stress test our materials. And Anthony, I know you turned us down, but we'll make you regret it, I guarantee.
I was too slow.
Yeah, I mean, it wrapped up in 2.5
Holy
weeks after
cow.
the kickoff, so it was.
By the way, for the investors on this call, all these companies are funded, so like they don't need your money, and clearly they are getting funded very fast. So pay attention.
But that was very, very good, and it allowed us to have another lens. And I think that for me this morning, the experience with the mentor session, what struck me was just how thoughtful it was in terms of who we were getting matched up with. And I felt like I walked away from that with some meaningful seeds planted in terms of I've already followed up with them, and I've got like time on the calendar with each of those mentors for additional conversations because we were able to identify alignment right away. And it's like, I feel like that is a reflection of your ability to interpret what we need and what we're looking for as companies. So, that event, that experience was fantastic. And if we can continue to do that as well, in terms of not just random interactions, but ones where, you've put in that thought and it shows, and it turns into something material.
All right, Casey, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, good. Well, I echo all of that. Definitely the connections in the platform to be able to connect with people. And I really like the peer-to-peer stuff. I think we did one thing there, and I've been a long time, a 10-year member of Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, in Calgary. And I think that this new ecosystem that I belong in and connecting with you people is really awesome. The mentorship's been awesome. I had an amazing mentor. We had some great conversations, so more of that. Definitely connections on peer-to-peer stuff. We're all going through the same, great stuff and shitty stuff. So let's talk about it and be vulnerable. I think that's important. And then, keep doing what you guys are doing. This has been great and supportive, and thank you.
Okay, well, terrific. I promised to end a little early here, and I want to thank the carpenter, the builder, the farmer, and the mover here for providing insights into what they are doing as companies, putting it all in the context of marketplaces, and reminding us that we are all here to help each other.